Pony pals or not pony pals? Not sure what to say because this is Wildland Acres, but we're going to do something odd today and not talk about horses. And enough as it may seem, I do have interests outside of hunt and jump, and an interest which honestly is one of the reasons why I like hunt and jump so much is genetics. And there has now been stir about talking about genetics with one of my favorite shows, specifically discussing Fury Dragons in the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, as there is now a new show in How to Train Your Dragon, like Dragons: The Nine Realms, which has been announced. I am not here today to discuss what I think about the show, whether or not this will be a good show, whether or not this will be a bad show. The show hasn't even come out yet. I honestly have no clue. I'm definitely a little nervous and I cannot guarantee whether or not I'll watch it or not. I honestly have no clue what'll happen. It hasn't even come out yet. There's like no knowledge about this show so far. We are not discussing whether or not this will be a good show or not because I don't have enough knowledge to really make that decision. If I was going to make the decision right now, I'm more likely to lean negative, but I honestly have not seen it yet, so can't really judge on that. The thing that we will be looking at though is we have a Fury Dragon. This looks like it's going to be the dragon for the main character, most likely, very similar to how Toothless was Hiccup's dragon. And if you look at this, like this is a Fury Dragon, and it has black on it, which, as far as we knew at the end of the How to Train Your Dragon is trilogy, Toothless was the only Night Fury left. Him and his descendants were the only ones with the black genetics. So, like, true. Coelacanths, we thought they were extinct for millions of years. They showed up. We thought crested geckos were extinct. They showed up, and now they're everywhere. There's a New Zealand walking stick, which we thought was extinct, showed up. People thought Night Furies were extinct, and then Toothless showed up. Like there could be others, but we're just gonna go off the assumption that Toothless was the last of was the only Night Fury existent at that time. And then we have his descendants, so everything with the black genetics is a descendant of Toothless. So this now brings in a lot of discussion. Heard a lot of discussion about genetics and what this means for the gene pool. I will say that I had studied genetics in college. I'm honestly like licensed to be able to teach genetics. I'm a person where when I was 10, I was studying goat genetics and I created my own new type of goat, which has a combination of traits that aren't found in other goats. Like genetics is kind of one of my hobbies, and both my grade and my hobbies kind of depended on me learning how to understand and work with genetics and what that meant, because it's very hard to make a new type of goat from scratch if you have no clue how genetics works. But I thought that we're gonna talk about this dragon. So if we go here, this is Toothless. This is the last of the pure Night Furies. This is this dragon. I will say that there is 1,300 years time difference between these dragons. So multiple generations like probably, let me see, since Toothless was maturing at a similar rate to Hiccup, let's say that they have a generation span of 20 years, which means that we'd have like 13 times 5, whatever, like you can do the math, that many generations. Like there'll be many generations going on that genetics can mix. You can mix genetics with other dragons because there were other Fury dragons outside of Toothless's family confirmed. I'm going to discuss Fury dragons. Like, there is definitely a distinct population of Light Furies, and, well, there is a population of Light Furies with a distinct phenotype that is what the outward expression of genes look like what an animal looks like, and or not like outward, inward, like what the genes code for. A genotype is what the genetic code is, but phenotype is the outward expression of it. Toothless is definitely a very different phenotype from the Light Furies, which are white. I am discussing Fury dragons as a whole, though, because honestly, like a lot of people like saying that Light Furies and Night Furies are two different species. Well, I will say this isn't, like, they could be, but, and like, the definition of species isn't 100%, but the scientifically understood the definition of a species is a group of individuals, like the largest group of individuals, where the offspring of two crossing can then have offspring themselves. Therefore, since we're 1,300 years in the future, it's like, unless this here is an offspring of Toothless and the Light Fairy, like if this is a descendant of the Nightlights, if the Nightlights can have babies at all, this heavily indicates that the Night Furies and Light Furies are subspecies or part of the same species. They're obviously two different populations which have been geographically separated. But if they can reproduce and their offspring can reproduce, it's leans pretty heavily that they can, that they are the same species. I will have a caveat though. Polar bears and grizzly bears can have babies, and those babies can have babies, and also bison and cows can reproduce, and you do have some infertility issues with their offspring. Mostly, like most of the bull calves cannot reproduce, but some of them can, and those are making a pretty good line of beefalo. So there are cases of two different species being able to reproduce and have offspring that reproduce. But let me see. I have pictures. Like, here's the light fairy, here's the night fairy. They're two different colors, but seeing these as the same species makes way more sense than the fact that a wolf, a Saint Bernard, and a Chihuahua are the same species. If they're the same species, I'm really not going to. Like, these are two different colors. There's lots of species with multiple color variations. There are other differences too, but we'll discuss that later. And any species, like species have multiple genes in them, having variation within the species actually shows stronger genetic pool and a more genetically viable species. Like, true, like you have to be careful about them being too genetically different, but if everything's a clone of itself, like cheetahs, they're so genetically similar that they're very much at risk. So the fact that you see differences honestly means that it's more likely that the species will survive long term. And since, like, it obviously has, we have this fury dragon. It's one over 1,000 years in the future. It is almost definitely a descendant of nightlights. So we have a fury dragon, and as I could be wrong, but as far as this discussion goes, I like night furies and light furies are two different populations, but I am considering fury dragons same, like two subspecies of the same uh, species. This is why, and we do have crossing, but honestly, like I am considering these the same species. That can be a very unpopular opinion, but I have given my reason why. So, we have lots of discussion of like the fact that this dragon is a descendant of Toothless and still has black. Like, does this mean that we have inbreeding going on? Like, why does it still have black? What's going on? So, I think at this point, we need to really figure out how to break down the genetics of fury dragons before we can really discuss it. So, what we will focus on most is Toothless's family here. So we have Toothless. He's a night fury. He's black, green eyes. He is the only pure night fury we ever know. So this is what we have to go on of what a night fury looks like. He has two little like inward fin things inside his bigger fins. You can't really see it well, but he's got ridges. She does not have ridges. She does not have the inward ear things. She is white. She's very sleek, but at the same time, not only are we looking at a difference between Night Fury and Light Fury here, we're also looking at a difference between a male and a female. So this gives us interesting things. But at the same time, what we can look at is we have their babies. We have 3 babies, which helps us better understand instead of just like having one, we can see crosses with multiples. The first thing here, like a lot of things that people comment on with this dragon is the fact that it's black and white spotted. These are also black and white spotted. So, but all we have is, but yeah, this is, we don't have much to go off of genetically. And another thing we need to keep in mind on is there's multiple modes of inheritance with genetics. A lot of us like to talk about Mendelian genetics or dominant recessive, where we will have, let me see, one gene is dominant. So let's say black would be dominant. So that is shown. Oh wow, I need to figure out how to. So Toothless would have capital B's because the dominant gene is shown with capital letter. And so you'd use the same letter for the recessive trait, but it would be lowercase. So the Light Fury would be lowercase b. And this is called a Punnett square. You can use this to figure out the ratios of what the kids would be. So Toothless would give a capital B to every child because I'm assuming, like, he's a Night Fury. I'm assuming that he comes from an all-black family. Since she is not black, if this was dominant recessive, she would have to have no dominant black genes. So we have all of these would have one capital B for dominant black, one lowercase b for recessive white. But since every baby which has a dominant black, an uppercase B would be solid black, which would be all of them. But like, what if like Toothless could still be black if he had one? If like maybe his mom was in Light Fury, so let's say that he had a dominant B to make him black and a lowercase b. So that means that he would only give dominant black to half of his children, and he would give recessive white to half of his children, which means that half of the children would be solid black with no white, and half of the children would be solid white with no black. So half of them would look like him, half of them would look like a light fairy. Well, let's look at the children. None of them are solid black. None of them are solid white. They are all spotted. So obviously, let me see, do we have a way to make this bigger? Can we make the dot bigger? Well, let me just badly. So obviously, the coloration of the Fury Dragons is not Mendelian genetics. There is no dominant or recessive traits. Another thing about dominant recessives, if a gene is dominant, it is always dominant if it is present. If a gene is recessive, it's always recessive. The only thing would be if a new gene was added, and that would be mutation, not a factor of the genes that are present. Once a gene is dominant, like a gene is dominant because it codes for a protein that covers up another protein. That's why, in many cases, darker colors are dominant over whiter color or lighter colors because it codes for a protein that covers it up. Unless the white is white because it codes for a protein that blocks the ability to color proteins or covers that up. But whichever gene codes for something that covers up the existing the other trait, that one is dominant. So you don't have a white decides to be dominant and then black decides to be dominant. Like, it's one gene is dominant and it's dominant, and that's the case, except for obviously it's not the case with Fury colors. Another mode of inheritance is incomplete dominance, where if you have so to have a white dragon, it would be, you'd have to have 2 copies of recessive white, or 2 copies of white. If you wanted a black dragon, you have 2 copies of the black gene, because if you had white and black, they would dilute each other and make a gray baby. Once again, you look at these babies, they're not all solid gray. So we don't have incomplete dominance going on here. The third one we'll talk about right now is called codominance. Something that I heard a while ago, which is a really funny, catchy thing that helps remember, is they both show, which means to have a solid colored parent, you have to have 2 copies of the gene. And if you have 1 copy of, like, say, black and 1 copy of white, the babies will have various mixtures of black and white pigment in them, which seems to be what we have going on here. So Fury Dragon genetics is codominant. Wait, I should not color with an eraser. So we have our Punnett square. I'll just go with, I'm trying to remember, do you do 2 different colors? I'm just gonna do one letter. So we'll once again, like I will write it out as if it was recessive dominant. It's not dominant, recessive dominant, whatever. But so since it's codominant and toothless is not black and white spotted, he only has black gene. Light Fury, since she does not have any black, she only has the white genes. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of that and put white down as W. That'll help. I need to refresh to see how correct this is, but so she has white, which means toothless only gives black genes. The Light Fury only gives white genes. And so every single one of their babies in a codominant inheritance pattern would have various degrees of black and white spotting on them, which is what we have going on here. So now that we've figured out the inheritance pattern, we can now figure out it isn't, as long as the gene gets passed, like you could have a nearly all black dragon or nearly all white dragon or any level in between. So as long as we still have both genes, they will still be present. So let's go and let's say we have a nightlight. The nightlights grow up and they have the black and the white gene. And they then breed with a Light Fury. The Light Fury can only give white genes. They have a black gene. So you will have black, white, black, white. You will also be able to give a white gene. So half of their babies will be white like Light Furies, but half of their babies will look just like them. They will be black and white nightlights. So let's just assume that, okay, we have these 3 babies. Each of them have 3 babies. So the next generation, there'll be 9 descendants of them. Like, kind of you choose. Like, will there be 5 nightlight babies and 4 Light Fury babies? I'm sorry, there's the dog again. Or will there be 4 nightlights and 5 Light Furies from that generation? Either way, there will still be nightlights. There will still be the black genetics, and like those 4 or 5 nightlights will have the black genetics and still be passing them on. And so after like multiple generations of them breeding with Light Furies, there will eventually be a case. Like let's say 20 generations down, you wouldn't be concerned about nightlights breeding with each other, right? It's like, I know most people are related 8 or 9 generations back, and yet marriages still happen. Honestly, it'd probably be sooner than that because they do have a bottleneck, which is there aren't that many Furies there. But still, we can like outbreed with a bunch of Light Furies to keep the genetics out, or have multiple genetics. And eventually one day we will have a nightlight with the black and white genetics with another nightlight with black and white genetics. And so let's look and see what will happen. I need to find a better way to erase. Sorry, guys. So, we have our nightlight. We will have given black Jean here and here. And this one will give white Jean here and here. This one will give the black Jean here and here. Well, this Jean will give, wait, this one will have the white Jean here and here. So what we have here is very interesting. A quarter of the offspring will be double black Night Fury looking dragons. We will have 50% of them being nightlights, the same percentage as a nightlight with a light fury. You will still have 50% nightlights. You'll have a quarter light furies, so you'll have as many solid black dragons as solid white dragons. So because of this, we're going to be seeing way more nightlights than anything else. But there's no reason, as long as any descendants with black survive and we don't kill them off, there really isn't any reason to expect the black gene to disappear. And as long as the black gene disappears, we're even going to have solid blacks with a toothless again, especially over 1,000 years later. There should be black dragons again without any concern for inbreeding. And because this is a codominant inheritance pattern. Another thing is in ecology, there's the Hardy-Weinberg principles. Hardy-Weinberg, he's famous for discussing that if everything's equal, genes should stay at the same genetic frequency going forward. So genes shouldn't come or go, they should just stay the same. At the same time, there is caveats, because obviously genes don't stay the same. There needs to not be selective pressure, which there was selective pressure against the black genetics before, because we had Gremmel hunting black night furies, which made the black genetics go down drastically. Now that they are in the hidden world and Gremmel is no longer in play, honestly, I don't know what's going on in the hidden world, but there's no reason to believe that there's anything that will select against the black genetics. So we probably will not have the black genetics the frequency of black genetics go down. Another thing is there needs to not be mutation. True, if enough people have been talking about there is mutation in this dragon, let's see, didn't really get a picture that shows it, but its tail fin looks different. I do find it interesting that there's definitely mutation going on with all the images of the dragons you see, but at the same time, it's been 1,000 years. Just look at dog breeds over 100 years. It's gonna happen. But at the same time, there obviously isn't mutation in the color genetics. We still have the same color genetics going on. We have a black and white nightlight, which is going to be that's honestly going to be the second most common color. I still think that light furies will be the most common, then nightlights, and then night furies are still going to be very rare. But all three colors will be present, and there's no reason to believe that something unusual to mess with it will happen. Another thing is outside outside factors with different genetics need to not come in. Like Toothless, when he came into the hidden world, like he definitely changed genetics going on. We don't have 100% solid white dragons. So as long as we don't, but at the same time, the hidden world is now sealed. We're not going to have dragons going in and out much anymore. So that's not a factor. The last factor is for the genes to not be changing at all. We need to have like random breeding, not having animals like select certain traits. This is definitely going to be a factor because we know there were light furies in the hidden world. This light fury had options. Toothless was was socially inept and trying to dance like a deadly natter, and yet she was still glomming over him. Obviously, tall, dark, and handsome, extremely attractive even in the dragon world. These light furies are going to be seeking out the dark males, which indicates that this is going to make it more like if there's more males than females and the male gets a short star or something, it's more likely going to be a light fury male. You're good, like these darker males are going to be selected for, which means the black genes, if anything, are just going to become more and more prevalent in this population. So the fact that we have our dragon here with black is not surprising at all. Like, as long as it has one black gene and one white gene, it's gonna look like this. Like, obviously you have a variety, like any amount of black and white, as long as there is black and white, is gonna work. But any nightlight is gonna pass the black gene to half of its babies. It's gonna like the black gene is here, guys. The girls dig it. It's gonna stay. As long as we don't have anything selecting against it, as long as we didn't put Grimmel in the hidden world, we're fine. Grimmel's not in the hidden world. Don't worry. Toothless and the black genetics, they are fine. So, we have other traits though. We have other traits other than just black and white. Scale color is not what makes a fury dragon. It's like there are a bunch of other, it's like if it was just the scale color, then king snakes would be night furies. Like, I want king snakes to be night furies. Well, like the black king snakes, there's lots of other colored king snakes too. And I'm not going to go into all the genetics, but another one which is interesting is the eye color. So we have Toothless has green eyes. Light Fury has blue eyes. Then we have 2 babies with green eyes and 1 baby with blue eyes. I will say, like, these babies do have bluer green eyes. Babies often have bluer shaded eyes than the adults. So I'm assuming that they will grow up to have a similar shade eyes as Toothless. This is going to be way more complicated. This could be dominant recessive genetics, where we have one is the one with the recessive trait. It's usually the blue eyes, but at the same time with goats, blue eyes is dominant, but in most cases, blue eyes is a recessive trait. So let's say the light fury is homozygous recessive for blue eyes. And then Toothless would have to be heterozygous. He has the green eye gene and the blue eye gene. And he passed the green eye gene to two of his babies, but not the third. So we have green eyed and blue eyed babies. This obviously is not a codominant trait because we don't have blue and green eye spotted babies. That would be very weird. I don't know of any case where green eye, if eye color is codominant, except for possibly hazel eyes, but these are not hazel eyes. This could be incomplete dominance, which is something that I kind of like because this would indicate that there is a gold eye gene, that there is a potential for gold-eyed night furies. Like not like him, but like yellow gold. And so he would be heterozygous. He would have a blue eye gene and a green eye gene, making his eyes green. She only has blue eye genes, obviously, because she has blue eyes. And then once again, he would pass the gold gene to two of his babies, making them green, and the blue gene to one of them, making hers blue. This one is Dart. She's a female. We have Rough Runner and Pouncer. They're both males. This also brings, I've heard people discuss this. I can't figure out where it came from. People say that the eyes are an indication of gender, which would make it a sex-linked trait. So where females have blue eyes and males have green eyes, which looking at these pictures makes sense. So this means that for it to be 100%, this means it would have to be on the Y chromosome. So only boys would get the gene for green eyes. But this means that eye color is on the sex chromosomes. There's there is common like the X chromosome genes, or like if the colors were on X chromosome genes, that means that a female would have to get a trait from both parents to show it, which is like Toothless obviously would have the green gene and would pass it on. Actually, no, this cannot be an X chromosome trait because, well, okay, she like the mothers would have to have two copies of the genes, and as an X chromosome trait, the traits of the male don't matter because the male does not, like, as far as the males go, their father, like whatever their father has on the X chromosome doesn't matter because their father did not give the sons anything on an X chromosome. But this means that she would have to have one green gene and one blue gene for it to be a genetic factor from her. So it's kind of hard to tell just looking at these. We do have other Fury dragons to look at. So we come here, like, here's Toothless, here's the Light Fury. Here is a still with two other dragons, Light Fury dragons, in the third movie. So these are definitely canon. They have, it's really hard to tell, but they both have blue eyes. And they both look female, which kind of like, okay, this one is probably mother looking over the baby. That makes sense. The baby, I guess it would be a female too if blue eyes is a trait, but at the same time, they are very similar in body style to our Light Fury, which we know is a female. So The question is, why are there no male light fairies present when we know that they're around because we have babies, but why aren't they there? My best guess is that they're being intimidated and subservient to Toothless, who is the alpha, so they're just kind of hiding low, which once again just shows how impressive the Night Furies are, which means that the Night Fury genetics are probably going to be sought out and increase in the population since everybody seems to be so impressed by Toothless. The girls are impressed by Toothless. The boys aren't even gonna hang around. Like, yeah, we have every reason to believe that the Night Fairy genetics is what's going to be getting passed on and increasing in the population. I will say, when I was like researching for this, I saw this picture. It's supposedly a Light Fury male from School of Dragons. I am uncertain how canon School of Dragons is, but at the same time, this is a very interesting picture. Like, if this is a male Light Fury dragon, we can, like, yeah, these are not males. Like, we have increased marbling on the legs. We have very interesting spike pattern. His tail fin looks way more like Toothless's tail fin than hers. So maybe tail fin shape is linked to gender. I don't know. At the same time, we only have this image to go off of, and it's kind of speculative how canon this is, but this is all we have to go off of. I'm looking here, and let me see, I don't know, like, are those spikes, or wait a minute, or are those the same as Toothless's inner things? Okay, how do I, okay, because you look like she's a female and she doesn't have those. Okay, maybe I'm gonna have to, there we go. So I'm starting, so it's like, is this a male trait or is this a Night Fury trait? It's really hard. I wish I knew whether those were ridges or whether or not those were the inner ears. Please let me know what you think. But we might have male traits other than green eyes, because you look here. Like, none of these Light Furies have green eyes. Not even the male has green eyes. So, if this is a trait based off of gender, it's pretty safe to say that this is not an X chromosome thing, which once again, like, that means some females would have it, but mostly males, kind of like color blindness in humans. But the male Light Fury does not have green eyes. So this looks like this is looking more like a recessive trait where we don't have the genetics for green eyes in this population of Light Furies. And once again, this is a trait that Toothless brings in. But once again, we're looking at mode of inheritance. This could be a Y chromosome thing from, like, a mutation within Night Furies that he brings to the table and only is in male Night Furies, which means that every male descendant of Toothless will have green eyes. But only the male descendants of Toothless would have the green eyes. This could be incomplete dominance, but at the same time, we have no proof of golden eyes. So this is probably my little fantasy dream child here, the black dragon with gold eyes. Like, it looks like this is a case of Mendelian genetics where he has the green eye gene and the blue eye gene. Either that or it is Y chromosome from the Night Furies, in which point if any male descendant of his does not have green eyes, that disproves that theory. So we go back to our dragon here. It has blue eyes. So if this is a trait to determine male and female with the Furies, or like the Night Fury descendant dragons, this would have to be a female dragon because every single male descendant from Toothless's line. Okay. Wait a moment. Every single direct male descendant. This could be a case. This could be the case of if Dart, she's a female, she could have babies with a male Light Fury. And so we would not be linked to. So if this is like the descendant of a female Nightlight, okay, sorry, I'm misleading you, but at the same time, I am curious. I really wish I knew the gender of this dragon as we are discussing eye color as far as gender, but at the same time, that would only this still could be a male with blue eyes and would only prove that it wasn't a direct male descendant of Toothless. At the same time, since a lot of people like saying that this is a descendant of Dart, our little girl here, which honestly, it could be a descendant of any of these. It just has to be a descendant of something with a black gene. But she would not be passing on any male traits specific to Toothless, which the green eyes, if it is a male trait, would be one specific to Toothless and his line of males. So at the same time, this is very inconclusive. Right now, it looks like it could be either green eyes could either be a trait of male descendants of Toothless or dominant recessive where Toothless has a green eye gene and a blue eye gene. We don't really know. We don't have enough information for this. But once again, since we're discussing traits that indicate gender, we have these two inner ear things, which may or may not be had on this male Light Fury. This kind of indicates that the inner ears is a male trait. Like we have our Light Furies, female Light Furies here, where the big ears are close together. They're kind of angled inwards. They seem like more, and they're definitely closer together on the head. And they kind of lean inwards. While our males, their ears kind of stick out more. And it's inconclusive whether this is just a ridge or the inner ears, but Toothless definitely has inner ears. Whether or not this is a Night Fury trait or a male trait, but we also have the ridges on both of these when these three do not. If we look, see, I'm trying to remember. If we look at their babies, though, we have inner ears on all three. We also have ridges on all three, which is very confusing because these two are males and this one's a female, so this indicates that these are not necessarily traits of a male Fury dragon, but more from the Night Fury lineage. At which this point, since all of them have these traits, I will say that ridges and ears are dominant. So Toothless has, let's just say ear. He has two, okay, two genes for the inner ears. The Light Fury does not, because she does not have the inner ears. This will be a dominant recessive Mendelian genetics trait. So all of these babies will have a dominant E gene, like for the little ears. So they will all have the inner ears, as we see. You can do the same thing with the ridges, which once again is what we see. The female will give a gene not coding for the inner ears, which means that to these these nightlights, half of their babies will have the inner ears, half of them will have the ridges. Not necessarily half of them will have inner ears and ridges. It'll be more like a quarter of them will have inner ears and ridges, while we have like some of them which have inner ears and no ridges, and some of them will have ridges and no inner ears. But they'll also have babies without inner ears, similar to the Light Furies, and babies without ridges. I'm very confused. Like, this guy kind of throws it off, though at the same time, I don't know how canon he is. And I'm just very confused because this indicates that these are male traits, while Dart, which would indicate that Dart is not a female. I don't know. But at the same time, if you really look, let me see, if you really look at her ears, they are closer together on her head, and they do lean more inwards, like the Light Fury female. While these guys, like, okay, he's laying down because so they're kind of flopping over, but their ears stick out more, similar to Toothless. So I'm very confused about that. But once again, we go look at our dragon here. If you look, he has, or he or she has inner ears. The ears definitely stick out. They don't stick in, though. Like, there's enough mutation going on with this dragon. It's been over 1,000 years that it's going to be really hard to really go into the fine detail to tell whether or not it's a male or female. So the ears, they look more like male ears to me, but they also don't look like the ears of any of the Furies before. So I don't know. It's got the inner ears like a Night Fury. It's got the ridges like either a Night Fury or male. I do find it interesting that the ridges are only on the head and not on the neck. So this is probably a younger individual, kind of like Toothless when Hiccup first found him, where he didn't have any ridges on the neck either at that point. It's got blue eyes, so this is either a female or a male that is not a direct male descendant of Toothless. And it has one black gene, one white gene, so this is either a the product of a black dragon with a white dragon, a black dragon with a nightlight with a nightlight, or a white dragon with a nightlight. There are so many different ways that this could come to pass. And since we have no reason for the black gene to be done away with in this population, and every reason to believe that this black gene would be selected for, and like this is the star-bellied sneetch right here. Like, they, like, you would want like in this, the way that the dragons were reacting to Toothless, you would want to be a dragon with as many black scales as possible. So yeah, we're going to have to see, but oh, we can have different colors. I'm gonna do blue because that's the color. But like this dragon, this dragon would have black gene and a white gene for its colors. It would have, ooh, let's do green for like G for eyes for green, but it's got blue eyes, so it will have recessive green. So since it has no uppercase G, it has blue eyes. Once again, this could either be because it's a girl, or because it's not a direct male descendant of Toothless, or because this is dominant recessive traits and it did not get the green gene from either of its parents, or a yellow gene if this is incomplete dominance. I'm still like wanting yellow-eyed night furies. I'm sorry, guys. For the ears, it will have one gene for ears, and we don't know, like, since ears would be dominant since all of Toothless's babies had them, we don't know whether it has two copies of the gene or not. Like, so many generations have happened that any combination of genetics could be had by now, and they don't even need, and dragons don't even need to be really that much related to have genes of Toothless. Like, he's probably the grandfather, like the great 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 grandfather of all these dragons by now. Let me see for ridges. Like, he's got ridges, but not many. So I don't know. Is this a dominant recessive thing? Is this a incomplete dominance thing? I don't know. I'm gonna right now put it has the ridge gene, but also say it doesn't. I should be putting that it's a question mark, but okay, I'm gonna put question mark over the top of that. But that is the genetics that we can tell of this dragon. At least as far as we can tell from looking at the very limited examples that we have. But yeah, we have dragons with these genetics. We have a reason to believe that the genetics that Toothless had would make dragons be the cool kids on the block, so more likely to be passed on. We have, like, this dragon has a very good mix of, like, has a mix of traits from Toothless and traits not from Toothless. And like, we could honestly have dragons which look just like Toothless as far as these genetics go at this point. Like, we're like 13 times 5 generations out, give or take. Very much give or take. But yeah. And we definitely have mutation going. Like, the ears definitely look different. The tail looked very different. The wings are different. Like, we definitely have mutations going on. At the same time, look at pictures of bulldogs from, or especially French bulldogs from 100 years ago to now. That is just 100 years of change in a population. This is 1,300 years of change in the population. This honestly, as far as change goes, it's believable. What the changes are, like, I do, like, apparently these dragons do not have selection pressures to try to make them the best flyers in the hidden world, which I guess in a pit you don't have to fly so well, Now the dragon is flying. Like, I really don't know what's going on with the show. I don't know anybody. I'm just here to talk about genetics because now we have more information and we know that Furies are very close, are closely enough related they can have babies that have babies now. We know that the Heidi Warburg principles apply to this. The principles of ecology apply to this group, except for the fact that females choose males in the population and they seem to like males with black, so we have reason to believe that it would be skewed to favor black genetics. As far as the dragon, as far as the traits that we have here, I have no reason to be concerned about this dragon whatsoever. This actually gives me a lot of cool new information to try to look into and a lot of things that I hadn't really thought about, like inner ears and ridges. And why does this dragon not have ridges on its neck? This might be an interesting thing. Like maybe they have to crawl through small tunnels, and so the dragons without ridges on their necks were selected for. I don't know. We definitely have mutation in play. Not in these situations, except for possibly ridges, but we have mutation in play. This is the thoughts of someone who studied genetics in college and in real life and in video games. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.